Ah, the myth of Stadiacus. The console that was given golden wings by its father Googleus, only to fly nowhere near the sun before crashing like a poorly made paper airplane that has to be connected to the internet at all times. As the PS5 and Xbox Series X soar while the Google Stadia crashes into oblivion, it seems like the perfect time to look at consoles that never took off. Perhaps the most infamous unreleased console of all time is the Nintendo PlayStation. The hybrid console that could play Super Nintendo cartridges and Sony's SuperDisc format is almost like a relic from an alternate universe. Sony and Nintendo's partnership looked like a match made in video gaming heaven, but it was not meant to be. The entire project had more double-dealing, backstabs, outright lies, and conquering heroes than a season of Game of Thrones. Left in the wake of the disastrous partnership between the two companies is a handful of prototypes that you can buy for $300,000. Imagine a world where you could have played Mario on your PS5. Kratos could be in Super Smash Bros. For a taste of that reality, $300,000 seems like a steal. Oh, Sega, the patron saint of poor console decisions. Consoles like the Sega Genesis and the Dreamcast may spark fond memories from 90s gamers, but some painfully bad business decisions made the Sega line of consoles stop forever. This is widely regarded as one of the biggest casualties of the brutal 90s console war with Nintendo that led to Sony and Microsoft's rise to prominence. As much ink as the Genesis, Saturn, and Dreamcast have gotten over the years, the Sega Pluto has been all but forgotten. Perhaps that's because it never made it to shelves in the first place. The Pluto was designed to be a variant of the Saturn, with internet connectivity and a new design. Details of the hardware weren't revealed until years later, making it almost a video game artifact that Indiana Jones would save from an ancient Sega temple. Perhaps the most interesting story about the Pluto came when a seller said he picked up the console at a yard sale for the price of $1. That was perhaps one of the greatest yard sale deals of all time, because as of 2020, collectors have paid up to $84,000 to own a piece of gaming history. Though we all know that Indy would prefer that it ended up in a museum. Atari used to be one of the kings of the gaming kingdom. It was the company that helped build the popularity of the home console and then subsequently destroy it with the E.T. adaptation, which led to the great video game crash of 1983. Back in its heyday, Atari still made the odd mistake or two. One of those was backing what would have been known as the Atari Game Brain. The problem was that it was a dedicated home console. That means that it had several games built into it, instead of the removable game cartridge style that led to the popularity of individually purchased games. By the time it was finished, it would have had to compete with several more popular consoles with cartridges, including Atari's own 2600. It may not have been intended to be a big seller, but it's hard to imagine they would have made enough off the console for it to be worth it. So the entire project was taken out just as it was ready to release. Regardless of the built-in games, there's no way a console named the Game Brain was ever going to be all that successful. It sounds like a monster you would fight at the end of a Metroid game. Google is far from the only company to swing and miss while aiming at the console kings. Infinium Labs nearly stepped up to the plate with their own questionable console, appropriately named Phantom. This console was supposedly always on, with gaming packages and rentals available for purchase. Most notably, the Phantom was supposed to be much more powerful than anything on the market. Then, like any other Phantom that has appeared on Ghost Hunters, it disappeared before anyone actually got to see it in the first place. I wouldn't be surprised if there was video game footage from Infinium Labs that features a grainy night vision image of the Phantom for only half a second before the engineers ran away screaming. VR technology may have finally delivered on a quality game with the Valve Index's Half-Life Alyx, but pretty much no one could actually afford the rig. Still, judging from all those Twitch live streams, it looks like it was a ton of fun for those 12 or 13 people who actually played it. This answered a promise that's been up in the air pretty much since gaming has existed. I'm pretty sure Nintendo hires bounty hunters to track down and destroy every remaining copy of the Virtual Boy. One of the various VR misfires that luckily never made it to shelves was the Sega VR. Flush with cash and hubris from the success of the Genesis, Sega backed this questionable piece of tech. It was supposed to be an upgraded version of a smaller rig Sega used in arcades, but there was a huge problem. Wanna guess what it was? That's right, it made pretty much everyone who used it sick. Motion sickness has been the arch enemy of VR technology for decades. Now that VR seems to be moving forward at last, they really need to work on that omnidirectional treadmill from Ready Player One, so that gamers don't have to rearrange their entire living room every time they want to play. Get to work, Peloton! Judging from the massive success Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo have had making gaming consoles, it's no surprise that dozens of companies have toyed around with the idea only to never make it to market. The big rumor now is that Apple is about to join the fray with a big console venture of their own. I mean, how could a console from one of the biggest and most successful tech companies possibly fail? In the early 90s, Japanese company Taito made a partnership to create what would have been known as the WoWoW. This CD-based console was supposed to be the perfect place to port Taito's arcade games. It was also notable for its capability to download games off the internet with a satellite receiver. Does that sound too good for the early 90s? That's because it was. There were numerous problems that made it a technical nightmare and pushed the price too far to be viable. Looking back on it several decades later, it sounds like they may have been onto something with that downloading games off the internet thing. Aside from all that, its bizarre name sounds more like a catchphrase from pitch meetings than it does a piece of gaming hardware. Unfortunately, there's no time to feature Taito's other shelf project, the super easy barely a gaming console, Vaporware, a computer-related product that has been widely advertised but has not and may never become available. This phrase gets tossed around a lot because fledgling game companies tend to take the Fire Festival approach to building a console. You promise everything to build up hype and then hope you figure it out later. A perfect example of this is the proposed console that would slay Nintendo's little powerhouse, the Game Boy. Gaming consoles get all the street cred nowadays, but the Game Boy deserves all the cred for revolutionizing the handheld gaming experience several times over. One of the consoles that tried to take on the champ was the action Gamemaster. It had even more ambition than that, if you can believe it. The handheld was meant to feature compatibility with cartridge and CD-based games of the era, something no other handheld could offer. The ironically titled Gamemaster proved to be the master of absolutely nothing. Not only did it never make it to shelves, apparently it barely made it into development at all. Despite broad claims about it becoming one of the biggest names in handheld gaming, it was more of a concept than an actual console. Not only that, but the concepts presented a piece of machinery that would have been far too bulky and expensive to ever challenge the King GB. It's a computer. It's a color TV. It's an arcade. It's absolutely nothing. Despite a boisterous advertisement that spelled out all the things the Ultravision video arcade system was going to be capable of, it never managed to do any of the three. It was supposed to be a 10-inch color TV that could switch between the various advertised functions. So in 1983, how could they possibly afford to create a 3-in-1 device that could offer you all of the entertainment you could ever need? Well, it turns out they couldn't. The astronomical costs of creating an ambitious piece of technology kept it from ever going beyond the prototype stage of development. They must have blown all the money at the ad agency for that slogan. I guess it's maybe a computer, maybe a color TV, maybe an arcade one day isn't quite as flashy. To be honest, I'm kind of glad that this technological monstrosity never became popular. I don't know about you, but I'm glad that I don't have to buy a 3-in-1 Sony Play Computer TV Station 5. So now seems like the perfect time to announce our official The Gamer gaming console. It's a very exciting piece of technology that will feature a remaster of the original ET game as a launch title. What could possibly go wrong?